Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are shining a very long, very sustained, and I have to say a very uncomfortable light on the places we think we know best. The places we just assume are safe, open, benign, suburban parks.
Right. They're built as these symbols of community, of childhood.
Exactly. The innocent, unsupervised freedom of childhood. But what happens when that meticulously constructed veneer of safety just peels away?
Yeah.
What happens when the familiar geometry of a slide or a swing set or a park bench suddenly becomes the stage for something deeply, deeply unsettling, something that actively subverts that whole expectation of safety?
And that's the core geographical and psychological question we're really digging into today. We've synthesized 3 distinct accounts, 3 chilling, escalating testimonies that redefine the park. Not as a recreational space, but as a potential hunting ground.
And we're going to move through 3 different levels of fear here.
That's right. We're starting with the cryptically unexplained, then moving to the obsessively human, and finally, the violently physical. Our mission really is to analyze the mechanism of dread itself.
How do these places work on our psyche?
Exactly. How do these routine, public, highly visible locations, the very places we send our kids, how do they become such efficient transmitters of pure terror? Especially when they're confronted with an unknown, illogical, or just an intensely focused threat.
But we're kind of decoding the geography of fear.
We are absolutely decoding the specific geography of fear today. We're looking at how light, shadow, and boundaries can be weaponized.
And for you listening, I have to say, you should probably prepare yourself.
Yeah.
Because the emotional intensity here, it really escalates as we go. We're going to examine the sensory details, that thud you shouldn't hear, the stair that doesn't move, the sound of a truck driving where it absolutely should not be.
And the escalating tension, the crucial elements of these stories that they actively defy rational explanation.
And the goal, it seems, of these encounters is to leave behind not just fear, but this lasting, corrosive paranoia. We're going to spend some serious time on each nugget of these accounts. So, okay. Let's unpack this and jump right into our first one. We've called it The Corruption of Innocence.
Ooh, I like that.
This first story takes us back about 20 years. It's a time of, I guess, genuine youthful freedom where the ultimate escape from your parents' rules was just getting on your bike and hanging out late.
Yeah.
Our source remembers being around 13, navigating that perfect transitional age. And the scene he paints it's absolutely foundational to the terror that's about to unfold.
And we have to establish that environmental context first, because that's where the subversion begins. They weren't just in any park.
No.
They chose a deliberate sanctuary of isolation. The source describes a location that had a thick patch of woods on 3 sides, and then across the street, another small, dark patch of woods.
So they're boxed in by darkness.
Completely. And critically, there were no neighboring houses directly facing the playground. This meant no potential witnesses, no quick calls to parents, and absolutely no ambient light or sound pollution from nearby residents.
They intentionally created a fortress of privacy.
Well, they did.
They chose the elevated playground surface to chill on because it was and I'm quoting here, a cool, elevated, hidden service. So they weren't just seeking a place to hang out. They were looking for a hidden perch, a secret lair.
And that bubble of privacy, that expectation of unobserved rebellion, is precisely why the intrusion that follows is so devastatingly effective.
Right?
The park, in that moment, is transformed in their minds from a public space into a private one. So when an outside, unknown element penetrates that bubble, it feels doubly invasive. It feels almost violating.
That's a great point. They sought freedom and privacy. And what they found was that the space already belonged to someone. Or, something else.
They thought they were the ones successfully isolating themselves from the world. But in reality, they were just isolating themselves for something that was already lurking in the shadows.
Okay, so the tension buildup here is, it's meticulous. It starts really slowly through auditory cues, which I think always feel more terrifying because they challenge the reality you're seeing with your own eyes.
Absolutely.
The first seed of doubt is planted by one of the friends, Tony, who just goes, shh, did you hear that?
Right. And he thinks he heard a footstep. Or some kind of thump, something that was definitively not one of them.
And what do 3 13-year-old boys do?
They rationalize.
They rationalize, they glance around, they see nothing, they dismiss it. And this initial moment of dismissal, it's absolutely crucial. It establishes their internal logic.
Yeah.
They're observant, they're listening, but they're not panicked yet.
Not yet. They're giving the environment the benefit of the doubt.
But that benefit of the doubt just perishes. It vanishes. And pretty quickly, a few minutes later, the threat escalates from one person's perception to a collective, undeniable reality.
Yeah, a sound they all heard. A definite, heavy thud emanating from somewhere on the physical playground itself.
Okay, let's unpack the difference between those two sounds for a second. The first was a potential footstep, right? Vague. Could be an animal, could be the wind.
Totally dismissible.
But the second one is a thud. Heavy, solid, and it's clearly originating from the structure they are physically on.
And that transition from a minor background noise to a significant physical impact on their immediate platform that signals that whatever is there is now moving with intention and possibly with weight. If one person hears a strange sound, it might be nerves. If Tony, Rob, and the narrator all hear an inexplicable thud on the platform they are standing on,
Then the alarm bells start going on.
that's when the primal alarm system engages. They know they are no longer alone, and the silence after that thud is the answer. This is not a friendly human.
And here's where the story takes a sharp turn. It goes from creepy intrusion to the actively impossible. After they settle back down, trying to, reestablish some calm.
Right.
The third sound arrives.
And this is the ultimate subversion of innocence.
It is a child's voice
Yeah.
coming from inside the twirling metal slide.
It's a direct assault on the rules of physics. That's often a key characteristic in these kinds of encounters. They had been in that park for 30 minutes. They had seen with their own eyes that the playground was empty.
And the sound source is enclosed.
Yeah.
It's twisting reality. The slide, which is, a symbol of playful, quick fun, suddenly becomes this closed, soundproof tube, acting as a microphone for a disembodied voice.
The geometry of the place is being used against them.
I have to stop you there, though, and offer a rational challenge, just for a second. If it's a toddler's voice, maybe a very small child slipped into the slide, unnoticed. Maybe they were stuck. It's unlikely, but it is plausible, right?
It is, and that is the narrator's exact thought process in that moment. The dialogue reflects this initial desire to rationalize. The narrator asks, "Is someone in there?"
And the voice.
The voice described as sounding like a toddler boy replied,
Yeah.
That simple, innocent greeting, delivered from an impossible, enclosed place. That's the key to the terror. It mimics the language of innocence to draw them closer. It's bait.
So the narrator acts on that rationalization. He climbs in to check. And this is the moment where the rational mind it breaks completely.
Precisely. He slides down, expecting to find a trapped child crumpled at the bottom, but the bottom is empty.
Completely empty.
Completely empty. They scan the wood chips, the surrounding grass. Not a soul. And this is the critical analytical nugget the source provides.
Right.
It was, and I quote, not possible for someone to have run away that quickly, especially not a young child.
No way. If a small child had just come out of that slide, they'd be dizzy, disoriented.
They'd make noise running through the wood chips.
Right. They would have needed several seconds at least to get out of sight. The instantaneous emptiness suggests either, preternatural speed.
Or that the voice was never tied to a physical body in the first place. The entity used the architecture of the park, the slide, to manifest an auditory signal purely for the purpose of luring them. The sense of violation here is total. The very symbol of childhood joy was used to draw them into a dark moment, proving that the geometry of the space was under its control.
It's not over.
Not even close. The voice returns, and this time, the dynamic shifts. It's no longer a potential victim needing rescue, it's an active predator using bait.
The child's voice issues a direct, simple command. Catch me.
And that's the psychological pivot. The game has begun, and the boys realize, with dawning horror, that they are the prey.
They realize they aren't dealing with a mystery anymore. They are now participants in a game they never, ever agreed to play.
Which is why the flight response is so primal.
Oh, absolutely. They bolted for our bikes, fueled by pure, unadulterated terror from the inexplicable. The description of the flight is visceral. They pedaled faster than they ever had before, seeking the hard boundary of the narrator's house.
They're trying to physically reestablish the boundaries between chaos and safety. They assume, if they can just reach their safe haven, the entity will be confined to the park.
An assumption which, as we know, is about to be completely shattered.
Right.
And this is the truly corrosive part of the story for me. The terror was not contained. They get back to the narrator's backyard, heart still pounding, trying to be quiet so they don't wake his dad.
They're in their safe space.
They think they are. They're trying to process the impossible events, a disembodied voice, the empty slide, when a distinct, polite knocking comes from the backyard gate.
This is the breach. The safe space, the presumed sanctuary of home, is instantly invaded. And it's not a violent smashing of the gate.
No.
It's an unnervingly polite interruption, as if the pursuit is now following social protocol just to increase the psychological tension. And an unfamiliar woman's voice asks, "Were you guys just at the park before?"
And they know the logistics make this impossible. They rode their bikes frantically. There's no way a person on foot could have followed that sprint, known which house they went into, and known exactly where they were regrouping in the backyard. Yet, here she is.
So the narrator finds a tiny crack in the gate where it met the fence. He peeks through, and we get the core, chilling visual of this entire account.
It's a middle-aged woman standing there with a big, wide, creepy grin on her face. But it's not just the grin. The critical detail is that she was already looking right at the tiny crack.
As if she knew.
As if she knew precisely where he would be looking and was waiting specifically for that eye contact.
That one detail eliminates all possibility of coincidence. She wasn't blindly knocking. She tracked them, knew their location, and knew their vulnerability, that tiny point of access and surveillance on their own gate.
It's pure calculation.
And the final exchange just confirms she was hunting them. The narrator, terrified, denies being at the park. Her reply, delivered with that unsettling certainty, is, "Are you sure?"
She doesn't argue.
No, she simply places a final, definitive question mark over their attempt to lie, confirming she knows the truth. She just stays there, smiling, looking through the crack.
The terrifying implication here is that this woman is the physical embodiment of the threat. She connects the illogical event, the voice, to a highly calculated, human-like pursuit.
It's a bait and switch.
Totally. The boys were lured by the voice of innocence, but they were hunted by the face of calculated menace. This act successfully poisons the narrator's sense of home security for years, proving that the external threat can and will insert itself into their safe space.
And this story leaves us with a specific kind of trauma. The knowledge that your physical location, however safe you think it is meaningless if the entity pursuing you can either defy physics or possess a relentless tracker who already knows your escape route. The fear is no longer confined to the park. It's waiting patiently at your gate.
We transition now from that high-impact, short burst of the inexplicable to something, I think, slower, quieter, but arguably even more corrosive.
The psychological torture of being constantly watched.
Exactly. We're moving from the failure of physics to the failure of human connection.
This next account, it completely shifts the tone. We trade impossible disappearances for the grinding psychological erosion of being monitored by a persistent, seemingly tireless human figure. This isn't a supernatural flashbang. This is slow burn psychological warfare.
And the setting, again, is crucial. It's a small suburban town where the social contract assumes safety and visibility. The narrator is simply seeking peace, heading out for a late-night walk to clear my head after a late work shift.
Right. And the park, even under streetlights, is described as feeling quiet, almost too quiet.
That phrase is a classic harbinger of dread, isn't it? The absence of normal ambient noise creates this vacuum that just heightens anxiety.
It does. The narrator isn't looking for adventure. They're seeking a therapeutic moment, a quick loop in the park. But instead, they encounter an almost immediate initiation into fear. And the initial calm of the scene, a few people walking dogs, quiet teenagers, that's important because it confirms the narrator's state was initially relaxed.
Right. It makes the unease, which is driven entirely by this one hooded man, much more credible. The intrusion begins with just a simple observation. The first sign of discord is a man sitting on a bench. And let's focus on the details that make this image instantly wrong. He's wearing a hoodie with the hood pulled tightly up.
Even though it wasn't cold.
Exactly. The source explicitly notes it wasn't cold. This is a deliberate concealment of identity.
The hooded figure is the physical manifestation of anonymity and potential menace. He wasn't engaged in any observable activity, not on his phone, not reading, not even looking around, just sitting, staring straight ahead, static and unmoving.
That immediate lack of visible purpose violates the expected social behavior of someone in a public space.
It does, and the escalation begins as the narrator passes. The man doesn't twitch, doesn't shift his body, but the narrator feels the deliberate, focused weight of his eyes tracking them. It's a lock-on.
That static, unmoving surveillance sinks the hook of dread.
Yeah.
When you look at someone and they look back, it's a social acknowledgement. When someone tracks you without moving any other part of their body, it suggests a chilling level of focus. The rational mind tries to dismiss it. Oh, he's probably just tired. Or he's spaced out.
But the primal alarm bells are already screaming, telling the narrator that they have been targeted, specifically targeted.
Yeah.
And that feeling leads directly to the confirmation that this man's purpose is linked exclusively to the narrator's presence.
The feeling of being watched quickly hardens into the certainty of being followed.
And it's confirmed solely by sound. Footsteps start right behind the narrator. The narrator pauses, a classic test of a follower, and the footsteps stop instantly.
That's the moment.
That's the moment they realize it's not a coincidence. The narrator describes the steps as too deliberate, too in sync. This is sophisticated psychological warfare. The stalker is choosing to mirror the narrator's pace, a nonverbal assertion of control and proximity.
It's the stalker saying, I am here and I am choosing to be in your reality.
So the narrator makes a choice designed to evade. They cut onto a less lit side trail, hoping the change in terrain will either lose the follower or force them into some kind of unnatural movement that provides an advantage.
But the man reacts perfectly. He just stands up and follows. And this is where the pacing needs to be slowed way down for analysis. He moves slow, almost like he was matching my pace without looking directly at me.
And that lack of direct visual engagement is profoundly unnerving.
It's so creepy.
He doesn't need to look at the narrator to know where they are or what speed they're setting. It suggests a complete internal control over the situation, a familiarity with either the act of tracking itself or maybe with the terrain. He is the master of the shadow.
Then comes the moment of desperate flight. The narrator breaks into a jog and then a full run. And the stalker.
He matches the speed perfectly, maintaining exactly the same distance. This mechanical, relentless pace, no heavy breathing, no sound of shoes scuffing, just the shadow made real, is the core terror of this whole encounter.
It almost suggests something non-human in its sustained effort. Or at least someone highly trained in pursuit.
It defeats the logical function of running. Running is supposed to increase the distance between you and the threat. When the threat matches your speed effortlessly, running becomes purely performative. It doesn't buy you safety, only time until the stalker decides to change the terms of the engagement.
The narrator's only salvation is the boundary, reaching the well-lit street outside the park's perimeter. When they finally reach that public road, they risk a glance back.
And the image is incredibly powerful. The man had stopped precisely at the edge of the shadows, standing just inside the tree line. This is where we analyze the concept of territory.
Right.
He wasn't interested in a physical assault on the street, which might invite public attention. His goal was purely surveillance and intimidation within the confines of his self-defined territory of control. The park. The dark shape under the hood, unmoving, just watching me.
This non-violent conclusion, this silent standoff, is the definition of psychological terror. The goal wasn't robbery or assault. The goal was to instill fear and prove mastery over the narrator's movement. He forced the narrator to abandon the space.
And he enforced the boundary by remaining the silent, unmoving guardian of the darkness. It creates a specific type of trauma. If he had assaulted them, the fear would be of physical pain and harm. Because he simply watched, the fear is rooted in the constant, inescapable knowledge that they are being monitored. The only violence inflicted was against their peace of mind.
And this is where the depth of that trauma really sets in. The dread doesn't dissipate with distance, it spreads. It contaminates the narrator's entire life.
They try to rationalize it later, but the rationalization fails because of the physical evidence they discover.
Ah, yes, the bench.
They return during the day to try and reclaim the space, searching for concrete proof, and they find it. The same bench where they first saw him had illegible, hasty carvings. Scratches smeared as if whoever did it didn't want it to be legible.
That signature, those scratches, are the physical facts that debunk any idea of this being a paranoid delusion. It proves the man was physically there, intentional, and left a marker, confirming his mastery over that space.
And this proof just fuels the pervasive paranoia. The narrator describes weeks of feeling intensely unsafe. Shadows moving, figures across the street vanishing, unrecognized cars lingering. The world outside the park begins to reflect the park's danger.
They feel constantly monitored.
As if the stalker didn't just target her path, but targeted her entire environment. And the confirmation of the stalker's true dedication comes weeks later. The narrator, deliberately avoiding the park, is jogging on the main, well-lit street.
And they see him again.
They see the figure again, just inside the tree line, same height, same build, hood up. The immediate instinct is that he had been there for hours, just watching.
This is the final chilling implication. He wasn't just patrolling. He was dedicated to maintaining the surveillance, irrespective of the narrator's attempts to change the routine. He successfully weaponized doubt and distance. He transformed a public park into a perpetual personalized zone of paranoia. And here's the true genius, I guess, of the stalker's operation.
Huh?
The security cameras recorded nothing.
Exactly. The lack of evidence solidifies the trauma. This means the man knew how to operate outside the system. He was either skillful in avoiding the sightlines, the cameras, or he only manifested in the moments when the narrator was alone in the shadow pockets.
So the official records show he was never there.
But the narrator holds a deeply held, visceral certainty that he was. The uncertainty, I have no idea who he was, why he was there, or if he's still around. That's the lingering poison.
The narrator ends the account with the feeling that the footsteps are still outside, far enough away to be unnoticed, but close enough to remind me that I'm being watched. The threat has successfully internalized. The park is no longer safe, and the surveillance has followed them home. We now move to our final account. We're leaving the realm of psychological and inexplicable threats and entering immediate, violently kinetic danger. This is the rawest, most physical confrontation.
This final account is the most recent, the most visceral. It happened less than a day before the narrator wrote it down. The fear here is not the slow dread of surveillance. It's the immediate, high-stakes terror of flight from multiple armed aggressors.
The stakes are instantly elevated to physical harm.
Absolutely. We shift from individual cryptic threats to group targeted aggression. The location is key again. Overlook Park, specifically an area called the Loop. This area is a cul-de-sac surrounded by a thick tree line, which, like the first park, ensures seclusion.
But unlike the first park, this seclusion is explicitly leveraged to trap visitors. The narrator and 5 friends were simply looking for a quiet spot to set off some legal fireworks, Roman candles.
Their initial choice of the Loop shows the group was seeking discretion, believing that if they hid in this tree-lined cul-de-sac, they wouldn't disturb anyone.
They unintentionally walked into an existing, occupied, and potentially hostile territory.
Very hostile.
The tension buildup starts immediately upon arrival. They notice several cars parked in different spots around the Loop, all with their lights off.
That suggests a covert gathering, a meeting, or some organized activity that requires discretion. Definitely not typical park visitation. That's the first red flag that they've entered a territory that is already claimed.
And then comes a small truck. It's behind them, lights off, and its behavior just screams intentional monitoring and aggression. The movements are key to proving intent, not accident.
What did it do?
The truck, which was facing the entrance, makes an intentional U-turn toward the group, so they hide. The truck passes slowly, drives back toward the entrance, stops suddenly, and makes another U-turn.
So it's circling, like a shark.
It's classic predatory behavior. It's confirming targets and establishing dominance over the space before making a move. The source says their stomachs sank because they intuitively understood that this maneuvering was not random driving.
They were being monitored by people who were establishing an aggressive perimeter. This is where the geography of fear transforms into the geography of a snare.
And the trigger is them lighting the Roman candle. The sparks, just momentarily illuminating the dark space, act as an immediate beacon, confirming their exact location and activity to their observers.
And the reaction is instantaneous, organized, and utterly violent in its intent. The truck immediately turns on its headlights and begins to drive toward them. But it doesn't use the road.
No.
The driver goes over the curb and drives through the grass directly at the 6 friends, simultaneously turning on high beams and laying on the horn.
Let's focus on that for a second. Driving a truck over a curb and through the grass shows a complete disregard for property, for the law. It demonstrates an intent to intimidate or inflict physical harm using the vehicle as a weapon.
It's a wildly disproportionate response to someone lighting a firework.
Wildly. This confirms the shift from unwanted guests to targeted prey. The goal is not a polite warning. It is immediate aggressive expulsion. Or worse. The friends have no choice but to sprint into the dense woods, unpathed, difficult terrain that actually makes them more vulnerable by separating them.
The sprint into the dense woods results in immediate separation, intensifying the danger. As they flee, they hear voices from the truck, confirming multiple people are involved. But the situation escalates further.
How?
They see more pairs of headlights turn on from the Loop,
Wow.
confirming multiple vehicles and multiple people involved in the pursuit. This is the moment they realize they walked into an ambush or a large, organized group gathering. It becomes a coordinated hunting operation.
And 2 men get out of the truck.
They do. They sprint down into the woods with flashlights, actively pursuing them through the difficult terrain. The narrator and two friends are trapped in a sunken part of the woods, with one group searching from the front and another from above, near the loop's edge.
Okay, I want to challenge the motive here.
Yeah.
Could this simply be a case of extremely angry neighbors or, territorial local teenagers who are disturbed?
That rationalization fails when you consider the methodology. If it were merely teenagers or angry neighbors, the response would likely be shouting, flashing lights, maybe calling the police, or driving close to the curb. The fact that the driver purposefully drove over the curb, using the truck aggressively, and the fact that multiple individuals immediately joined the foot pursuit, it suggests a coordinated effort to secure the loop for whatever covert activity was happening there. The level of response is entirely irrational unless the fireworks disrupted something far more sinister than a late-night picnic.
That's the unsettling implication. They weren't just angry about fireworks. They were protecting a secret. And the friends were witnesses that needed to be neutralized or severely intimidated.
And the initial chaos might suggest a simple territorial brawl, but the true nature of the threat, the sheer violence they were escaping, is confirmed only after the truck leaves and the narrator regroups with friend. They were searching for a lost phone when this friend provides the essential, horrifying detail.
This detail is the absolute moment where the incident moves from a dispute to potential attempted murder. The friend saw one of the men run past, carrying what looked like a knife or some kind of melee weapon.
A melee weapon, likely a machete or a significant fixed blade knife, changes everything. These weren't people who simply wanted them to leave. They were prepared to inflict severe, potentially fatal harm.
This confirms the extreme terror felt by the group and entirely justifies their panicked, desperate flight through the dense woods. The motivation ceased to be simple frustration and became instantly the intent to harm or neutralize. They were actively being hunted. The park was now a war zone. The escape is just a desperate kinetic scramble. They're spotted again, and the truck, still lurking, immediately pulls to the edge of the woods, tracking their movement with high beams. The aggressors are using light to herd their targets.
They finally escaped by cutting deeper into the woods, utilizing the thick tree line until they reached a main public road leading out of the loop. The truck doesn't follow beyond the park entrance.
Why stop there? If they were so intent on catching them, why respect the boundary of the main road?
Because the main road represents a high visibility line. Following them onto a public street under potential surveillance of passing traffic or residential lights would expose their violent intent and the fact that they were carrying deadly weapons.
And controlled the shadow territory.
Exactly. But they stopped at the point where they risked becoming visible to the outside world.
The trauma is just so clear. The narrator states, "It felt like an eternity at the time, and I've never been more scared in my life. The loop is now permanently categorized not just as a secluded spot, but as a site of confirmed, targeted, life-threatening danger."
It proves that some public parks function as concealed hunting grounds for those with violent, incomprehensible motives.
So what does this all mean for us? We've navigated 3 distinct architectures of fear within the setting of the suburban park. We started with the fear of the illogical, the slide entity, and the grinning tracker, who defied speed and social boundaries. We moved to the fear of the utterly rational, the mechanical, silent stalker, whose only goal was psychological torment through constant non-violent surveillance. And finally, we confronted the fear of the aggressively physical, the armed group who transformed a simple cul-de-sac into a violent trap.
And in every case, the promised safety of the public park was a profound, dangerous lie.
The overwhelming connection between these 3 accounts is the feeling of being actively hunted by an unknown entity with an incomprehensible motive.
That's it. Whether it's an entity using innocence as bait, a hyper-focused stalker weaponizing doubt, or a vigilante group enforcing a secret territorial claim with deadly force, the result is the same. The public common space is repurposed into a hunting ground.
And crucially, the lack of clean resolution in all 3 cases is what guarantees the lasting trauma. The grinning woman vanishes without a trace, leaving only the impossibility of her speed.
The hooded stalker avoids all security cameras, leaving only illegible scratches as his signature.
And the violence in the woods is chalked up to fireworks, not the presence of armed men driving a truck over a curb.
This forces the victims to live in 2 conflicting realities. There is the mundane, everyday reality where the park is safe and open, and then there's the intensely personal, traumatic reality where they were cornered, chased, or monitored by something that either violated the rules of physics or the rules of society, and there is no official record of the encounter.
Right, the inability to fully describe the stalker. the woman's vanishing act, the missing security footage. It all ensures the trauma is never contained or resolved. If these places, these meticulously designed parks and paths, are engineered for community visibility and safety, what dark function are they truly serving when the lights go out?
When we seek isolation in places meant for gathering, what exactly are we inviting in?
The lesson from these sources is clear. The visibility of a street sign or a park bench doesn't guarantee security. The geography of fear exists not just where the shadows are, but where the dark function of the space is hidden.
And that leads us to the final provocative thought. The next time you walk by a quiet park, or hear a sound where there shouldn't be one, a definitive thud on an empty platform, a sudden, perfectly synchronized step behind you, or the sound of an engine driving deliberately through the grass, ask yourself this. If the system, the police, and the cameras aren't picking them up, then the entity controlling that space is operating completely outside the boundaries of human law or logic.
Perhaps the safest place isn't where there are more people, but where the dark corners and the secluded cul-de-sacs simply don't exist. You are alone when you step into the shadows, and someone or something is standing just beyond the tree line, watching and waiting for you to make your move.